start, it's important to know who we are talking with tonight, right? So we're going to start by my right.
Hey guys, my name is Ben. I own a channel called Ben Willingdorf, and I do a bunch of DIY projects, and I use vlogging to tell the stories of my projects.
Hi everyone, I'm Samantha. I am a success coach and a brand strategist.
I'm Steve, guys. What's up?
Hi, my name is Monia, and I do brand marketing and content planning.
I'm Jackie, and I have a channel called Nerdy Crafter. I do lots of geeky DIYs for people who are just geeks.
Perfect. So tonight, the goal of the night is to know more about branding. What is branding? How do you define your branding? To start the conversation, guys, I would like to know, what is branding for you? So when somebody tells you, hey, I love your branding, or let's say you're like, you know what, I gotta work on my branding. What does it define it? What it is for you?
No one's able to like, go give me the mic. I'm gonna give it to Maria because I know she's gonna.
I have a problem with the word branding. I have a problem with the word branding. It is marketing jargon. It's kind of got lost in the system a little bit. So the word branding, brand, marketing, brand identity, it kind of all gets mixed into one. What branding is your reputation when you leave the room, basically. So what branding is the promise that you've made to your audience and the expectations that they have for you. So that's basically what it is. So if you think of it as in you're going to a house party, when you leave this house party, what are people going to say about you? Basically, that's what branding is. Brand identity is how you dress for the house party. It's your logo, your colors, your typography, the tone of voice, and all that.
I like something that you said that somebody didn't talk about in the previous panel. You relate the tone of your voice to your branding. So I'll go with you. So when it comes to branding, does the tone of your voice makes a difference for you? And like, to what extent do you control your branding?
I think your voice really does portray who you are, because you start to get a kind of, I think branding also can be channel culture, in my opinion. So if you have a branding and you have a certain tone of voice, I mean, if we think about Jacksepticeye, right? Right away, he's like, top of the morning, I can't even say it. But he has his own branding, and we know his voice, and we can tell who he is, even if we don't see him. So at the beginning of every video, you kind of want to create this link, I think, with your subscribers. So when they hear your voice, I think they should be able to identify you and kind of feel the sense of, I guess, I don't want to say belonging, but familiarity is, I think, the word I'm looking for.
Okay. Would you have anything to add to that?
Sure. I think it has a large part to do with the story that you want to tell. So, you know, like when you said, whether you're leaving the room or people are leaving your page or your Twitter profile, they're walking away with that same story, as though they've read the same story, whether it's short form, long form. Your website content, your posts, your videos, whatever channel you're using should all tell that story that is your brand and ultimately you.
Yeah, I mean, if I can add to that, like, branding is a lot about how people perceive you, but I think good branding starts by how you perceive yourself. So if you perceive yourself in a certain way, I mean, to work on that, to really know who you are as an individual and apply it to your brand.
So your brand is definitely more important than just, let's say, online. It's the thing that you bring offline, right? So what are the tools that you guys used for your branding? Did you go online, websites, books?
For the clients, so I work with a lot of clients. I don't have my own personal brand. I do branding. So I used to work in an agency. So the type of connection that people would make with the brand is it could be 360, right? It's offline and online. It actually should be the experience overall. So as Samantha was saying, it's about the story and how that story is taken away. So depending on what your goals are and how you want to connect with an audience, there are multiple mediums, multiple ways to connect. And For example, this is an event that we're connecting together. It is being documented, it is being tweeted, it is being Instagrammed, it is on Swishlink, excuse me. Right, so I guess I think that answers your question.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. Yeah, it does answer my question. Do you have any tools that you use, like, to add up on your branding?
I think the biggest tool for anyone starting a channel is themselves. So you want to know who you are and what you want to portray, and I think looking at some other YouTubers, you can say, well, what reminds me of this person? So then you look at what they do, and you're like, okay, I need to mimic so that when I have my own things, people remember me by those kind of things.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
I guess for me, the best way of branding yourself is to look back at who you were in the past as a kid, because kids are so innocent that they don't lie. And when you first hop on YouTube, when I first started YouTube, I was 13, I'm now 23, so I've been on YouTube for 10 years, which is quite a long time. But at some point you reach a level where you're trying to copy some other people because they're successful and you're copying them, and then you realize that it's not really you. And for me, the best way was to go back to my past and who was I when I was really a kid? What did I like to do as a kid, and now I'm doing it today. As a kid, I personally really enjoy making projects, and I came back to the roots of making projects, and that's what I do now on my YouTube channel, is projects.
I keep worrying I'm going to turn this thing off. Okay. It sounds ancient and very dinosaur-like of me, but a pen and paper is such a huge tool in my life. I will put Bristol boards up on my wall and take out some permanent markers and just throw what's in my mind out onto paper. And there's a really silly meme going around that no one is you and that's your superpower. It's cheesy, but it's so true. And there's a oversaturated market with different messaging and similar industries, and so in order to really build your brand and stand out, as someone was saying earlier in the French panel, was that you've got to figure out your twist and your spin on it. And so one of the things that I found really helpful is thinking, okay, what am I? What am I good at? What are my passions? I put them all out. I'm thinking, how can this shitstorm of ideas create a story, and how does that build a brand? And as I start to connect the dots, it made sense that I'm able to. I've got a past with criminology, and I was an addictions counselor, and now I was a wedding planner. And how does that make sense into one brand? And once it's out of my head and onto paper, it becomes tangible.
Yeah. So if I can add to that, the last video I posted on my YouTube channel is unique achievements, and it's all about giving myself rewards for past achievements that I've never received the rewards for. And the main message of that whole video was that we're all individually unique, but what makes us different is the way that we tell our stories. So yeah, we're all.
So this is amazing. Those are great tools that you guys can use. I mean, we talk about using yourself, pen and paper, going on YouTube, but I'm the type of guy that I'm always scared to walk the wrong path. So do you have like don'ts, like something that you shouldn't do for your branding? Like you don't care if your mother told you about it, just don't do it.
I would say don't do something that you wouldn't want your grandma to watch. Maybe not. So it depends on, again, who you are. The definite big don'ts is don't have your channel be confused. Because if your channel is inconsistent in what it presents, people who subscribed to you subscribe for a promise. So if your channel is inconsistent, they'll feel like you've broken a promise to them. So they'll feel like you've betrayed them somehow. And subscribers, I love subscribers, but they feel like very fragile pets. I love them. But if you change something, they'll start panicking. And I've seen that because I've added an extra element to my crafting, and many comments were starting to freak out. So I had to reassure them many times that, don't worry, it's still the same promise. So you have to stay consistent in your promise.
Yeah, actually, that's exactly what I would have said, is that if you're going to be telling a story, each story has a series of pillars, right? Those are the pillars and values that you stand for, and the promise that you actually are making to your audience. If you veer off of that, then you're inauthentic. You might as well be Coca-Cola. I don't know if you know who Jason Silva is. He's one of the more well-known influencers out there. So he most recently got bought out by, or got asked to do an Axe commercial. So Axe just did a series where they went out and they just got a series of 25 influencers or 100 influencers and told them to go and promote their stuff. And he's all about authenticity and about a life message, and out of nowhere he's showing this Axe product. And in his comments, you should have seen the aggression that came out. Like, how could you, selling out, so on and so forth, because it was completely off of his values and off of his brand. And almost immediately, he went back to talking the way he usually talked. So I agree with you 100%. I think that you have to stay consistent.
But to come on that, what's really tough for you guys is, if you do something bad, it's gonna hurt you, even when it's just a little bad. Even just one thing that you did bad, it's gonna still hurt you on the long term. So my next question is, when you build your brand, what are the next step for you? So we thought, are you gonna go more commercial? How can you keep it for yourself? Like, what is the next step that comes to your mind to say, you know what, I wanna bring my brand to the next level?
I had something to add from the question just before that. So about do's and don'ts about branding. I think there's nothing wrong or right to do when it comes to branding. But I do have like a golden rule, and my golden rule is that you shouldn't do anything that somebody else is doing unless you can do better. Let's say I do projects. I'll research who's making these projects, and unless I think I can potentially do something a lot better than what they did, I'm not going to try to do it. I'm not going to try to copy somebody else, because otherwise you're copying. So yeah. But,
I think, so my response kind of blends the past question and this one of do's and don'ts. And yeah, so do's, don'ts, and taking your brand to the next level. Do it for yourself, right? This is because you feel empowered, you feel that this truly resonates with you. Do not get selfish. And so it can be really easy to kind of fall victim to the likes and the payments and whatever else will come with it. But, you know, as she was mentioning, people are committing to you for, you know, the promise that you've made to them. And so by getting kind of swept away from it, it will stunt your growth. People are following you for a certain reason. And you got into it because you wanted to implement change, because you wanted to influence. And the second you start, you know, being someone you're not, or you start, you know, faking it or doing it only for yourself and not for the people who you got into it for in the first place, it really takes away from that experience.
Taking your branding to the next level, that's the next question. That was the question, right?
Yeah, that's the past question.
Okay, oh, that wasn't the new one?
No, that's the right question.
Okay, so the branding, to take it to the next level is to actually go out there, put yourself out there, contact companies that you feel you would be happy to work in. So, for example, I've done projects for Activision Blizzard. I've worked with some projects with Nintendo. So these are projects that as a kid I'm like, oh, I have to live with them, or any of that. So if you put yourself out there, the worst case scenario, worst case, you won't get a reply. Nothing lost. So you really should take risks in terms of your branding, putting it out there. And then sometimes in turn they'll share your stuff on their site so you get seen more.
So while I go pay for the pizza for everybody, so you guys can just like turn up even more, my next question is, go, I don't go.
Does anybody know about Social Blue Book? Okay, so Social Blue Book is essentially something where you can log in your YouTube channel or your Twitter account and see how much a video of yours is worth. So if let's say a brand wants to pay you for some video, Social Blue Book can give you an indication of how much you're worth for that video. So yeah, that's a cool tool, Social Blue Book.
I don't know about that, but that's pretty cool.
So I've never personally done a brand on my YouTube YouTube channel because I still feel like I'm growing on YouTube, and like you previously said, you're trying to sell your own brand to an audience and grow your audience, but if you're selling somebody else's brand and trying to grow your audience at the same time, you're trying to sell two things for one price or something, and it's going to negatively impact your growth on YouTube if you're trying to promote somebody else's brand rather than promoting your own. And also something that I think can be interesting for some people that are interested in business is, let's say you're promoting a brand that makes t-shirts, but you think that you're able to make t-shirts on your own. Why would you just not just promote your own t-shirts instead of promoting somebody else's t-shirts? I mean, t-shirts is really simple, but it can go beyond t-shirts. But yeah, think about all these companies are investing thousands and thousands of dollars into creators, but why can't you just create your own products and sell it to your audience instead of promoting somebody else's?
Sorry, I'm just gonna, before passing it to you, I have this thing, where I'll tell people, yes, you've got to stay consistent, you've got to be on brand, but I think you also have to be open to change. People evolve, and your story will evolve. And so I think as long as you're transparent with your audience in letting them know that you either have a difference in opinion or something has happened to make you think differently, get them on board with it, have them part of that movement, but don't be afraid to change because they're changing too.
Did I miss a question? Is there a new question? So, sorry, Pizza is there, but we can go after this panel. So what were you guys talking about? Talking about me? So yeah, branding. Now, something that I like about the previous panel that we talked about was, does your branding comes before, let's say, your YouTube channel? Does it come before creating all your social media, or it comes in the way, like you learn your branding at the same time?
YouTube as a whole is a learning experience. So the more you create, the more you find out about yourself. So your branding will evolve with you. And that's how I've noticed is that your banner will change. And it's okay to change your banner and the look as long as the feel is still the same. So if you're a geek and you want to portray this geekness but in more modern fonts, kind of like, I think we took Coca-Cola as an example. So they change their fonts with time to make it more modern. So I think your branding can change with you, and it's important to evolve. And if you stagnate, that's the worst thing, because your subscribers need you, but different.
So the question was, is it the branding or the tactic that comes first?
Yeah, basically, yeah.
It's the branding that comes first. So a tactic is a channel, there's multiple tactics out there, right? So you always start off with understanding who you are. So multiple times, I think on this panel and on the French panel, we've said understand who you are first, right? So same thing for a personal brand or a regular brand, is figure out what your core is, what your why is. Everybody knows the Simon Sinek video, right? Start with your why. So and I think Gary Vee quotes it as self-awareness. So start off with understanding who you are first, understand what your brand is, what your values are, what your story is. Because the visual elements, those will change, as you had mentioned, and it can be adaptable by tactic, because every tactic has a different type of audience and they consume the information differently. So that's the answer to that question.
I think from a marketing perspective, absolutely, branding should go first. You want to know what you're putting out there before you put it out there. From a personal perspective, I would have to respectfully disagree. I think that oftentimes so many people are so hesitant and waiting for it to be perfect that it stops them from moving the ball forward. It stops them from making any progress. I don't have a brand, I don't have an image, therefore I will not do it. Throw that idea out and just start, because it won't be perfect, it won't be ready when you want it to be. It's always going to be able to be evolved, and so sometimes you need to just start the channel, start the feed, and just get that ball going so that eventually you can evolve over time, because you'll get to know your audience and what your message, who's it resonating with, and where is it sticking for you to really start evolving that brand.
So now we come to the last question, basically, which is more personal. Something it doesn't need to be about branding, but it's more like if you had one thing to say to anybody that'd be like, yeah, I don't know if I should keep pushing, I don't know when to start. What would be like your words to inspiration? What would you suggest for someone that would, let's say, would like to start a YouTube channel, for example, or just keep on growing in this?
Yeah, it's a little bit longer than a sentence, but you know. So for anybody that's not familiar with what I do on YouTube, 2 years ago I built this giant snowman for my house. It was bigger than my house. It got the attention of so many media outlets, and through that, the idea was to document the process of building a giant snowman and do a video. And through finishing the project, so many people came to my house and I saw the opportunity of raising money for a charity. So I raised money for a charity called Opération Enfants Soleil here in Quebec. And I raised over $6,350 for the charity. But it was never the intent of raising money. The intent was making a good project, and the money came after. So I think the main message of what I'm trying to say is going to YouTube, trying to share a really good story, a really good product, and the money that comes out of it is out of your control. You can't control how many people are going to like you, but you can control how you like your own product.
Amazing. I like that.
I don't know if I follow that, so I'll wait.
Yeah, you know, right? Yeah, that was a good answer, man. Wow, that was dope.
Is anyone from Nike here? My advice is just do it. So that's it. It's important to be ambitious, so just do it.
Like that.
Like that.
And I've got the same advice. It's basically to reinforce what you were saying before.
No, find something else.
Fine. Fine. I guess don't let the fear stop you, right? That's, I think there's a lot of self-doubt, and I am reinforcing what you're saying. There's a lot of self-doubt that happens, especially for personal branding, right? And you've got to put yourself out there. I think that's what you have to do. So it's like, my favorite mantra is forward is forward no matter how slow. You're always just moving forward.
Amazing, amazing. And the last but not the least,
So one of the things that comes to mind, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Jay Baird. He's an author, he's a marketer, and one of his golden rules is to hug your haters. And he has this, 3-part series, pretty interesting in that no response is a response. And so obviously there are going to be people who are trolling you, people are going to be jealous, people are going to be trying to break down your brand. But you want to show that, yes, you're genuine, yes, you're real, yes, you care, you're doing it for the people who are following you, and so acknowledge them once online. If they continue, acknowledge them a second time, offline, whether you could find an email address or a personal message, personal DM. Strike 3, they're done. That's it. You've given them the public awareness, you've given them personal reach out, hey, sorry this bothered you, how can I help? But this was really what I was trying to say with this, or just thanks for caring, but I don't agree with you. But the idea is that you want to show that you do care, because when you do nothing, it shows that you don't.
amazing. Please a round of applause for our panelists.